Today in class, we talked about independent and dependent variables, and we talked about writing two variable equations. Okay, so let's first review what is an independent variable and what is a dependent variable. So first off, an independent variable in any equation may have its value freely chosen regardless of the value of any other variable. Okay, so the independent variable is one that you can pick and it doesn't depend on anything else. Okay. So it is freely chosen and it does not depend on anything else. Whereas the dependent variable is a variable whose values depend, thus the name dependent, on the values of one or more independent variables. Okay, so it is like the cause and effect relationship. It would be the effect. Okay, it depends on whatever the independent variable is. So special note, because we're going to have to graph these tomorrow, the x value represents the independent variable, okay? And the y value represents the dependent variable. So when we're making a table of independent and dependent variables, the independent is the x, so it's the first column. The dependent is the y, so it's the second column. When we are graphing, the independent is on the x-axis, and the dependent is going to be on the y-axis. So we're going to take a second here just to practice picking out independent versus dependent variables. And then here in a second, we're going to actually write the equations. So I always like to pick out the dependent variable first because it's easier to see what depends on something else, and then the other one is just your independent variable. So let's look at our first example here. It says how fast the grass grows depends on how much rain we get. Okay, so it actually says here that grass growth depends on the rain. So grass growth is going to be our dependent variable. I'm going to call it G because we need a variable. And it depends on how much rain we get. So how much rain we get is the independent variable. If we get a lot of rain, the grass is going to grow a lot. If we don't get any rain, the grass isn't going to grow very much at all. Grass growth depends on the rain, so it's dependent. The number of problems missed on a test determines your grade on the test, okay? So if we think about it, if we miss a whole lot of questions, our grade is going to be really low. If we don't miss any questions, our grade is going to be really high. So our test grade, I also named it G, is dependent on how many questions we miss. So the number of questions that we miss is independent. Okay, so M, the number of problems missed, is independent, and your grade is dependent on the independent variable. So the next one says the number of cakes sold in a bake sale determines the amount of money that they make. So if we think about it, if they sell a whole bunch of cakes, they're going to make a lot of money. If they don't sell many cakes, they're not going to make much money. So the money is dependent on how many cakes that they sell. So M would be our dependent variable, and C, for the number of cakes they sell, would be our independent variable. The amount of money that Amelia makes depends on the amount of hours that she works. So if Amelia only works a few hours, she's not going to make very much money. However, if she works a lot of hours, her money is going to go up. So the money that she makes is dependent on the hours she works. So it's our dependent variable, or M. And H is going to be our independent variable because it's how many hours she works, and it directly affects the money that she makes. Okay, this is my favorite example I ever do. Mr. Kendrick's weight will increase depending on how many donuts he eats. Okay, so if Mr. Kendrick doesn't eat very many donuts at all, his weight's going to stay down. However, if he eats a whole bunch of donuts, his weight is going to go up. So his weight depends on how many donuts he eats. So it's our dependent variable, and I named it W for weight. And the independent variable is going to be how many donuts he eats, or D. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this skill, picking out independence and dependence, and we're going to write an equation with those. Okay, so let's look at number one. It says Peter coaches a soccer clinic and charges $15 per player. T stands for the total amount of money he makes, and P stands for the amount of players that sign up. Okay, so our independent variable here would be the amount of players that sign up, because if he has a lot of players, he's going to make a lot of money. If he doesn't have a lot of players, he isn't going to make very much money. So the dependent is the money that he makes, the total money he makes, okay? So we're going to write an equation, and our equation is going to say T, the total amount of money he makes, equals $15 times each player, okay? So T, the total amount of money he makes, equals $15 times each player that signs up. All right, let's look at number 2. Number 2 says, Mr. Mason's soccer team is having a car wash to raise money for the new uniforms. The team is charging $4 per car, so we know that's multiplication, $4 for every car. C stands for how many cars they wash, and M stands for the amount of money that they raise. Okay, so the amount of money they raise depends on how many cars they wash. Therefore, C is going to be our independent variable, because the more cars, the more money, the less cars, the less money. And M is going to be our dependent, because the money raised depends on the independent variable. We already said it's $4 per car, so the money that they make equals $4 times every car that they sell. Okay, so the money they make, M, equals $4 times each car that they wash. There's our equation. All right, let's take a look at number 3. Number 3 says, Tara pays for her cell phone bill monthly. Each month she pays $78.99. So every single month she's paying $78.99. So we know that's multiplication. It says let P stand for the total she pays and M stand for the month that she pays her bill. So the total that she pays depends on how many months she's paying for. So that makes our months the independent variable, and P, or the total paid, the dependent. If she's only paying for 2 months, it's going to be less than if she pays for 14 months. Okay, so our equation is going to say the total amount that she pays equals $78.99 times however many months that she's paying for. So P, or the total amount she pays, is equal to $78.99 times however many months. So P equals $78.99 M. Let's take a look at number 4. Number 4 says, Amanda reads 20 pages a night before she goes to bed, where N stands for the number of nights that she has read, and P stands for the total number of pages that she read. So if we're looking, the total amount of pages that she reads depends on how many nights that she read. If she only read 2 nights that week, she's not going to have read nearly as many pages as if she had read every night that week. So that makes N, or the nights that she reads, our independent variable, and the total amount of pages she's read, or P, our dependent variable. Okay, so the total amount of pages that she read equals 20 pages times however many nights. So P equals 20 times N.